Okay, welcome to the kickoff event of the second cooperation report between Estonia and Latvia. We have Latvian Foreign Minister Edgars Rinkēvičs with us in Riga. I hope he will be on the picture soon. Then we have Latvian Rapporteur Janis Eichmanis in Riga as well. And here from Tallinn, we have Foreign Minister Eva-Maria Liimets and Estonian Rapporteur Mr. Ragnar Kond. And since we have wasted 5 minutes already, I would like to give floor to the speakers. But before that, also remind you that you can ask questions via workshop platform or via Facebook, as you can just write comments on the events video stream. So, Minister Rinkevičs, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and very good afternoon to everyone. First of all, good afternoon to Eva-Maria and to rapporteurs, but also very special good afternoon to our moderator, Evelyn Kaldoja. I think that actually the one who is really responsible for this event and the fact that we are launching the kind of joint report and the preparation of that report today is you and your question during the press conference on 17th of February, after which we decided that actually it's a great idea. I think that this also shows that media and journalists have direct impact on policy making. I also believe that the rapporteurs from both sides, from our side, Mr. Janis Eichmanis and also Mr. Ragnar Kond, are very experienced and very professional persons who will be looking into what has been achieved throughout almost 11 years since we had the last report, but also look at opportunities that we can have in the future. During preparation for this event, we looked at the last report that was prepared and finished in 2010. There were 62 items, and we see that most of those items have been fulfilled or are in the process of fulfillment. There are also a lot of positive examples where we have reached a very high level of cooperation. During Lennart Meri conference, together with Eva-Maria, Foreign Minister of Estonia, we jointly handed over the language award. This is the tradition that we have started more than 10 years ago. There is very practical cooperation when it comes to renewable energy projects. We have had also the first Latvian-Estonian government meeting back in 2018, the year when both of our countries celebrated centennial of independence. I think that there is a high need to repeat this intergovernmental or joint governmental meeting somewhere next year. But of course, I leave it to both rapporteurs to look what has been achieved, what are the ideas where we can cooperate more. When it comes to the expectations, I would say that I very much hope that during the work on this report, both of rapporteurs will consult with public, will consult with NGOs, will consult with people. Second, I also believe that it is very important that we also, and the COVID-19 pandemic has shown that this is a must, that we will also look at our, let's say, very special situation with Valka and Valga. I think that there are already a lot of good examples how those two cities are cooperating, how people are cooperating, and even in the period of lockdowns last year, we had to make special exemptions so that both cities can function normally. But I think also that we should look what we can do more to enhance also the cooperation, not only between our two countries, but specifically also between those two cities. As I said, I very much look forward to both very experienced rapporteurs. I know Mr. Janis Eichmanis personally for more than 20 years. He's been our ambassador to NATO, to Canada, to Spain, but he has been also doing a lot of research when it comes to the Arctic region, to EU, and also I do believe that he is the best choice to work with his counterpart, Mr. Ragnar Kond. And I also think that it is good that there is not only diplomats or academicians, but also journalists who are doing that report. So from that point of view, the representative from the Estonian public broadcaster is probably the best choice. I'll stop here. I very much look forward to also answering some questions. And I also want to thank Eva-Maria Liimets and her team for excellent cooperation that we have had. And actually, you know, this is the kind of kickoff event because we have almost now a regular tradition to meet on a weekly basis, and we are going to do that in person tomorrow during Baltic Assembly meeting. And next week, I believe we will find again some good opportunities to do that around the EU meetings. So that shows also how intense the personal cooperation with our Estonian friends and particularly with the minister we have. Thank you very much.
And hopefully soon in Riga at NATO ministerial as well. But here, I think I see that our foreign minister, Eva-Maria Liimets, has been making some notes already and has a good speech prepared. So floor to her.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, also from my behalf. Dear colleagues, dear Edgars, distinguished rapporteurs, dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited and deeply honored to be part of this special project that celebrates our good neighborly relations with Latvia and also close ties between our people. Today, we are officially and symbolically kicking off this process all together with all the main players. Welcome, everyone. There is no need for a long introduction about our bilateral relations, and many things were already mentioned by Minister Rinkēvičs. Estonia and Latvia are two very close countries, both geographically and in mindset. We share a common history, we have the same values and objectives. Our economies are interlinked through trade and foreign investments, active cross-border cooperation and tourism, close people-to-people contacts. In 2018, our country's governments held even a joint session together. And last but not least, I also would like to mention that we even share a town, Valga. The cooperation between our two countries includes nearly all possible areas, from foreign policy and defense cooperation to cultural exchange and a yearly language award. So one might wonder that if we already share so many things and cooperate in so many areas, why do we need a visionary report? Indeed, we do work on many issues on a daily basis. However, now and then it is useful to take a moment to think, to look around from a new and fresh perspective. This is why we are particularly glad about the start of the drafting process of the visionary report on the Estonia-Latvia future cooperation. We want to look at where we currently stand, what we have achieved, and where we want to be in the future. I think that there are plenty of areas in which we can explore even more new opportunities for this collaboration. As it was also mentioned already, the first visionary report of 2010 gave us many innovative ideas for cooperation between our two countries. I would here like to recognize and thank the co-authors of the first report, Mr. Anvar Samost, who was also a journalist, and Mr. Andris Razants. This report has been extremely valuable with its findings and also visionary recommendations. I expect nothing less from the second report, which we are launching here today. New ideas are always more than welcome. The aim of the report will be to look into the future, to the challenges and possibilities the future holds for us in the context of global and regional trends, to visualize the future of our country's cooperation. I'm excited to hear what our independent co-authors, Mr. Ragnar Kond and Mr. Janis Eichmanis, have planned, and they will tell us soon enough. The Estonian Foreign Policy Institute, adding further expertise, supports the rapporteurs. I would like to thank them for stepping in to assume this important task and wish a rewarding process, which in this case may be as important as the final outcome itself. As today's event is directed to the public, I would like to encourage all viewers to present via Facebook or WhatsApp any comments they may have, as well as their proposals and keywords which should be taken into account during this process. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for Minister Liimets. As I see from Facebook, at least 3 people like the event and 1 people loves it even. And then I think that it's time for Janis Eichmanis to give his first presentation of what he hopes or what are his aspirations for this report. So Janis, back to Riga.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Yes, I am delighted to be part of this and to be chosen as the rapporteur for Latvia. Well, greetings to all, including those who are watching this on YouTube. This, I think, is an exciting project that hopefully will continue in the future. As we have discussed, the first report was about 10 years ago. And if we consider what was written, then it was clear that geography and history have made us neighbors. But I should remind everybody, certainly on both sides of the border, that each of us has to become good neighbors to each other. And this is part of the process of how we will try to encourage this good neighborliness. I have to say, since the first report has changed dramatically with the increasing term challenges. Thus, we can mention right now the COVID pandemic, but we can't rule out the possibility that sometime in the future there will be other pandemics. Then there is the question of climate change and the critical state it's in, as we have heard from speakers at the Glasgow conference over the weekend. There's also the issue of great power competition. And even now there is considerable talk about the possibility that there could be a conflict in Southeast Asia. Nor should we neglect new technologies. And here I include artificial intelligence, quantum computing, machine learning. How each of these will impact us as individuals and as societies is not clear. But we have to keep abreast of these developments to that they serve human purposes and not machine purposes. Since the first report and its recommendations on Estonian and Latvian cooperation, I think it's fair to say, and as Estonian Foreign Minister indicated, a great deal has been achieved, both bilaterally and in a multilateral context. For example, in transport, we have the ongoing Rail Baltic project, which hopefully will be completed in the next couple of years, that will join Northern Europe to Central Europe, with all the implications that has for tourism and economics. Then the question of energy, the Baltic states, Latvia, Estonia, to be completely part of the European electricity grid. And I should also mention in this context that the recently signed Memorandum of Understanding on creating a wind farm in the Baltic Sea. And as was mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, there is the question of Valga-Valka. And as we all know, there is a commission on cross-border cooperation that tries to solve some of the problems that arise from that relationship between, I shall say, one city in two countries. Here, I think we should mention the fact that the European program Interreg has done a good job. Hopefully, it will continue to do so in the future, as that provides a stimulus for our cooperation. Also, it was mentioned that in 2018, both governments came together to make various decisions on how we can cooperate more closely. I think this was an excellent idea, and as already I think been mentioned, but it's something that should be in our cooperation, some form of institutionalization of the relationship at the highest levels. I think it's only at those levels that you have then a clear direction to everybody else in society, the ministry, to develop and increase the level of cooperation. But there has to be some kind of direction given from the top. And here, as I mentioned, I think that should be my point government meetings. And as I was mentioned, some of these projects that were mentioned in the first report will continue on in the second report. But I think another dimension of this, and which would be an aid to developing this high-level cooperation and provide the policy direction for others, is if we had a joint foresight capability. That is, some people on both sides of the border who would be given the task of looking at some of the issues that I mentioned earlier and some of the challenges that we will face together in the future, and trying to give analysis of how these develop, how we can jointly deal with them. Such a foresight group, I think it's fair to say, is now very, very popular in various other countries. And I think there's no reason why Latvia and Estonia cannot do this jointly. It would be a very, very good way of ensuring that we not only look or seek analysis of the future, but a way of each of us trying to think in a more creative way, because we have partners. So I'm hoping that that's something that will appear in the report. And finally, I have to say, from a personal point of view, I thank the Latvian foreign minister for the kind words that he said about me. I've been a member of the Latvian Foreign Service for a large number of years, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. And as I was beginning, I'm very much thankful that I was chosen as a rapporteur. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janis. And now, Ragnar, I hope Janis didn't spend all the ideas you have thought of together to his speech, and you still have something to add.
Thank you, Evelyn. Siin Tallinnas me oleme kõigile tere öelnud, Sveitsinatjari visiem kassatrodas Latvias plus kodatais ministrakungs, protams Janis on visitsiti mūsu pasakuma dalībnieki. Latvia has always been a part of my life, as of course Estonia, my homeland, where I was born. So the attitudes, trends, people, and as well as problems seem familiar and comprehensible to me. It's an honor to work together with Janis Eichmanis, the well-known, practiced and knowledgeable Latvian diplomat, foreign and defense policy expert. Hope we can complement each other. It's an honor to continue from the Estonian side the work of the previous co-author Anvar Samost, my very good colleague and the head of our news department in Estonian public broadcasting. When we think about the relationship between Estonia and Latvia, it's true that we are very good friends, like-minded people, and as we know also from the history, in critical and fundamental situations we find common ground and solutions. But another time, mentioned figuratively, we have a huge number of open doors between Latvia and Estonia. The problem is that we can't or don't want to come in. Even it seems we do not notice those doors at all, and we pass by. That was a long period during what we thought. We have a lack of information about each other. We know nothing about our neighbors. No, now I hope the period is over. It's difficult to feel is it over at all, but in the media and social media of another side, we find not only news, but also more analytical writings and programs, films, exhibitions. In universities and state institutions, it's possible to find studies that compare one or another area of life between Latvia and Estonia. At the same time, we can't use these results in practice because they are so separated and hard to find. Our aim is to put the main ideas together into this report. In my point of view, it's necessary also to give information not only about real everyday partnership, like common projects or investments made on the other sides, which of course will be a part of our work. We also need, I think, and we need it very much, to answer how our neighbors solve the most important development issues. I am not talking only about taxes. For Estonians, it is very useful to know how Latvians keep their mother tongue and carry out their studies at the minority schools in Latvian. For Latvians, it is very important to know how we hold elections through the internet in Estonia, and how we solve technical security problems that keep the Latvian experts insecure. I hope we succeed to organize a meeting about cooperation in aviation. It's a very interesting situation. Majority of Estonians think that we need our own strong airline, and Air Baltic is just one of the competitors. At the same time, Martin Kaus, the head of Air Baltic, who won the Livonian Award just a few weeks ago, is trying all the time to explain that Tallinn Airport and direct flights from there are a part of the Latvian airlines business plan, and they don't leave Tallinn. But Estonians can't believe those words. Now we have pandemic, and during this time it's very interesting to watch and compare how our neighbors solve the crisis situation and keep their democratic values. I know very well that Latvians criticize their politicians and government. You have more restrictions than Estonia. Also, it seems that decisions in Estonia are like a Latvian mirror, only a couple of weeks later. I watched this decision-making process in Latvia very thoroughly, and my position is that you succeed in giving your residents very clear messages from both sides, doctors and politicians. And what is interesting in the context of our report, your government sessions are open for the public. I follow them very often, and discussions there give a good overview how hard it is to take responsibility and how healthy is the coalition. Maybe we can learn from this in Estonia as well. Another interesting thing is that the Latvian president has the right to initiate legislations. And also is very useful to monitor how our people live in our border areas. Problems there seem so small from Riga and Tallinn, but hundreds of people cross the border every day. They have to go to work on the other side of the border. And not only in the twin town Valga. The specificity there is unique on the whole European level. There is a common city center, an art school, and different activities. There is a very good example of cooperation between our unemployment insurance authorities. Labor market of the border areas is common, and it's possible to find information about available jobs on the other side of the border. The problem, of course, is different language, but in all offices it's not important. At the same time, we see, and the measure of Valka municipality events Armand Krauklis can confirm my words, that many Latvian residents decide to declare their place of residence on the Estonian side, Valga. Also, it's clear to everyone that they live in Valka at home. Maybe we'll succeed to give any proposals for a solution in this field too. Sure, we want to discuss and find opportunities for cooperation that really works in everyday life. Do we need regular both government sessions? What we can do to the owners of our small businesses to find a new market in Estonia and Latvia? We are lucky that we have people who carry on with our cooperation on the highest level. Thank you, Gunter Skwadinš, Maima Grinberga-Valts, Ernst Reits, many others. I hope that all state and private institutions in Latvia and Estonia will kindly agree to share your ideas and knowledge with me and Janis. Then our report will be useful for everyone and not just a piece of paper. Thank you.
Thank you. I sincerely also hope that it won't be just a piece of paper, and you already in your presentations showed that you have ideas that complement each other. Maybe just to catch up with or to pick it from the word piece of paper, who do you think could be the target audience of your report? Who should be reading it? Who would you like it to reach? Maybe starting with Ragnar here and then moving on to Janis.
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned, I hope it's necessary for everyone, for enterprises, for cultural people, for those who are interested in our cooperation, how to make things better. And also, I hope we have possibility to give some new ideas for politicians to solve problems what we have nowadays between our countries.
Janis, whom are you writing for?
Well, I think I'm in broad agreement with Ragnar about this should be something that should be of interest to everybody. But I think that from my perspective, I would like to see this being also very much a people's report. And I hope that since both of you are journalists, that the journalists in both countries will read this report and find ways in which journalists in both countries can, how shall I say, educate the broader public about the reason why this report was created and the ideas that are in the report. I always believe that when it comes to cooperation, it is not just a top-down issue, but it's also a bottom-up issue. And when you have the broad public in support of this kind of an initiative, I think it's much easier to get the people at the top to work their way down, if you like. So yes, I agree with Ragnar, but I hope that journalists will help us in publicizing this report when it comes out. Thank you.
One of the issues we can't overlook now would be COVID crisis, because Estonia and Latvia both are deep down there. What do you think? To what extent will the report reflect on the ongoing crisis, and will there be some lessons from it, drawn from it, that will be written down to your report? I don't know. Janis, maybe starting with you this time.
That's a very hard question, as you well know. The issue for me has been all along, you might say, a philosophical one, and that is the issue of those who are quite happy to get vaccinated and who don't want to become vaccinated. And the difficulty we have certainly in Latvia, but not just in Latvia, but it seems to be a worldwide phenomena of getting all members of society to be vaccinated with the appropriate vaccine. And I think that this is part of the value system in which we live. I saw a program about Denmark, and a young man was interviewed, and he was asked, "Why did you get vaccinated?" And he said, "You know, this is not just for me, but for everybody else in Danish society." He understood that vaccination is something in which you have to recognize that one's freedom ends where another person's freedom begins. And when you're not vaccinated, this issue is very, very real. Because if you're not vaccinated, then the possibility of you giving that virus to somebody else becomes real. And from a philosophical point of view, that is not how we should be cooperating among ourselves in society. We should recognize that we have an obligation not just to ourselves, but to other members of our society. So if we're talking about cooperation across the border, we have to also recognize there's cooperation within each border, within each country. And one way of doing it is everybody gets vaccinated. So that will be my bottom line in any report on the issue of COVID. Thank you.
Ragnar, how you know it probably from Valga region as well. How well is how well are the medical systems cooperating with each other?
It's difficult to say because before the crisis times, these cooperations was not so succeed, and I hope it maybe will be in the future. But I think that the main thing is not just compare about I don't know, restrictions or something like that about COVID. But the main thing is to compare how governments, politicians and doctors make decisions. And this is the main thing about this crisis. And I hope there will be a lot of ideas to compare and see how our neighbors will solve these problems. And I hope this decision-making process is the most important thing from our report side.
We have some questions from the audience. It seems that there are some people who are listening and watching us. So the first of them would be, there is Estonia-Latvia program running for more than 10 years, approving joint Estonia-Latvia projects. Is this report somehow connected to it? Influences or decisions? So Estonia-Latvia program running for more than 10 years. Is this report connected with the program?
Well, I can say, if I can jump in, I think what this person is referring to is the European Union Interreg program. And there's a subdivision of that program called Estonia and Latvia Cooperation, which deals, as far as I can tell, with the cross-border issues, principally in Valka, but not necessarily. But it has no connection directly with what we're doing. Obviously, I think we will probably mention the European program in our report simply as one of the motivating factors that creates cooperation between us. But we have to recognize that the whole purpose of the European Union is to encourage this kind of cooperation that we're undertaking. So we are, in a sense, fulfilling our obligations to the European Union. Thank you.
Minister Liimets, you wanted to intervene as well.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to emphasize that this report is purely independent, and we as the government representatives, we have shown the political will that we think that it would be good to provide additional ideas to our bilateral cooperation, and but how and which kind of elements rapporteurs bring in, it's totally up to them.
Okay. Your freedom has been re-emphasized. Ragnar, your turn.
For me, it's very important. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we have another question here. The new 2021 to 2027 Interreg Estonia-Latvia program is drafted and will be published for public consultation on 8th of November. There's also a website address provided here. Perhaps relevant input as well. I don't know if we can consider it as a comment or, well, it basically goes to the same field, right? So it's just a recommendation. You have received a recommendation. Would you like to comment on it or maybe just take it into account? We'll check it from Facebook, whether we have here questions. It doesn't seem so. One thing I wanted to ask out of curiosity, which language are you working in? It's Latvian, or when you are consulting with each other, when you're writing the report? Janis and Ragnar. Yeah, as I understand, Janis still doesn't speak much Estonian, or have you managed to?
He will learn, I hope.
He will learn, exactly.
The only phrase that I know in Estonian is "Tuulesilja." But I'm not quite sure when to use it. No, I think Ragnar and I agreed that maybe he was being kind to me, that my English is a lot better than my Estonian, or for that matter, my Latvian. So if you recall the first report, it was in 3 languages. It was in Latvian, Estonian, and English. For various, I guess, political and, what shall I call it, distribution reasons. So I will write in English, and hopefully somebody better than I will translate it into good English, good Latvian, and somebody will translate it into good Estonian. And maybe it could be even Ragnar, I don't know, but I'll leave that to him.
But when you meet, will you speak Latvian or English?
I hope with Estonians we speak Estonian language, and with Latvian language.
But with each other?
Each other, we can speak Latvian, we can speak English.
Do you think Latvian should be in school curricular on border areas, for example, Valga, or maybe it is being taught? Latvian as a language to Estonian children in Valga, for example, or maybe Estonian for Latvian children in Valka?
I don't know how many people learn this language in the border areas, but there is art school yeah, there is a study in Estonian as well, but I mention in everyday life that more and more people in Riga can talk very Estonian language, and we have Estonian school in Riga, and there are not only Estonian children, there are the most of children there is from Latvian side, and they will learn Estonian language, Estonian culture. I think it's very important, and they see future, maybe business in business field and some other fields, and the language helps them to carry on their life.
So beware, people in Riga. While you have managed to get the system of Russian schools under control, there is sneaking Estonianization in Riga. So it's. But
If I can comment on that, it turns out that I live across the street from the Estonian embassy. So I am, how should I say, a very close neighbor of Estonia.
so
And very good example is Latvian ambassador here in Tallinn, who speaks very well Estonian.
I think he has some domestic. He has some domestic reasons for it. How easy or difficult is it to learn respective languages in other country? I don't know, for Latvian, if a Latvian wants to learn Estonian, where? And if an Estonian wants to learn Latvian here in Estonia, where can she or he do it? Is there any, are there any possibilities? Or I don't know, people who come to work, for example, to Estonia, where have they learned it?
Of course, there are some courses, but I think that in the family level or business level, people can learn language very fast. They need to talk and they learn language very fast if they practice this language their everyday life, everyday work or families and something like that.
Seems that we have some questions from the audience again. So some are very blunt, seems like coming from Estonia. Estonia and Latvia cooperate in many areas. Why do we need this report? I don't know if it's the question for rapporteurs or the ministers who commissioned the report. So maybe I would ask from the ministers first. I don't know, Minister Liimets, would you start?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you. This is a good question because as we also in the initially in the opening words, we mentioned that our countries are already that interlinked that it's really hard to add additional activities for our people or businesses. And therefore, this report, we very much, I personally very much hope that this report will provide additional new ideas what the countries could do together to do more for our people, and also what maybe businesses and people could do to get more together to benefit more from our very good neighborly relations. Also, if there are some bottlenecks in any of the areas, then of course we hope that these bottlenecks will be brought out, and also from the government side we could then try to find solutions to these bottlenecks. So I hope that in this report will be some practical advices that we could also implement in our cooperation with Latvia later on.
So, to Riga, Minister Rinkēvičs, what will we gain from it?
Thank you very much for the question. I think that, right, we do have bilateral cooperation in many fields. And probably some of things we really feel and we think that those are self-evident. But I would say that, for instance, when our predecessors launched the language award, I think it was 2008 or 2009, if I'm not mistaken, even prior to that report, they were talking, as I remember reading some of the minutes of those meetings, that it's really great that we are neighbors. But if we look at, for instance, the fact that Latvian readers do not know much about Estonian literature, Estonian readers do not know much about Latvian literature. Frankly, if you look at some other areas of cooperation, those developed only when somebody kind of looked where we are in certain process, in certain time, when it comes to state of cooperation, not only in politics, not only in trade or economy, but let's say in culture, education, and realize that actually we are close, but we are not using the potential at all. From that point of view, the previous report that we referred so much in our introductory remarks, also both rapporteurs were referring to, the previous report gave some good ideas that have been implemented and again are self-evident. I think it's time to do some checkup, and I think that someone who has more time, and in this case I refer to Mr. Eichmanis and also to Mr. Kond, they can look where we are, what kind of cooperation we have, where we have issues to address, and maybe they come up with new ideas. Somebody was asking also here about the effects of cross-border cooperation, about those programs. Actually, also those programs are being developed on practical needs, but also on ideas where we can cooperate. We have now very new experience of tackling COVID. Especially last year during the first wave of pandemic, when there were closed borders, we realized how many issues we need to actually address during the health emergency in order to ensure that the kind of close cross-border cooperation, especially Valka-Valga, functions as normally as possible. I also know that there are many issues, and some were mentioned, especially when it comes to Valka and Valga, that we need to continue to address. And then, yes, I very much liked the kind of introductory remarks by Estonian rapporteur. And I realized that actually it's sometimes very interesting that Latvians always look at Estonia as a kind of model. This is better, they do that differently and more efficiently. And now I realize that also the same feeling in Estonia is about some of those decisions and some of those things that we do in Latvia, especially when it comes to pandemic. I bet most of people here believe that Estonian approach to tackling COVID-19 is much better than Latvian. And I can now understand that many of Estonians would probably think that that the decisions taken in Latvia are probably better than their own government decisions. So I think we need some kind of checkup, some kind of X-rays of our relationship in order to move further, in order to launch new ideas or actually to bolster some of the existing projects. And that is where such kind of reports are very helpful.
Okay, now we have a question from Facebook by Kins Jägermanis. He asks, is there anything that Latvians and Estonians have in common that we jointly could exploit in giving advice to other nations and regions? For instance, is there something going on in digital cooperation? So getting back to the rapporteurs, what have you found out so far?
What was the last part of the question?
Is there something going on in digital cooperation where Estonia and Latvia could jointly give advice about to other nations and regions? So something where we cooperate and where we could take our advice elsewhere. For example, digital.
Well, I'm not an expert on this as yet. I am only beginning to dig into all these sorts of issues. But it seems to me, of what I do know is that a number of databases are now being shared between Estonia and Latvia, particularly the registry on, I guess, what do you call it? Where do people live? We talked earlier about Volga people, Latvians, registering in Estonia, but living in Latvia. And I think it is the database. The databases on the registry databases should be shared, so that both governments know who is living on which side of the border. So that's taking place. Obviously, there are other kinds of databases that we can share as part of the, I think, European-wide system, driver's licenses and the number of the registry of car serial numbers, et cetera, so to find where a stolen car happens to be. So there are, it seems to me, at this early stage of what I know, still some things that other people, other countries can engage in. And we'll see how that develops, particularly as this relates to other parts of Europe. Thank you.
Ragnar, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think that the digital cooperation is a very important field for us, but more thoroughly, I hope we can talk later in our report. But yeah, it's very important field.
Okay, unfortunately, we don't have time for all the questions because the questions have been, people have started asking questions, but there is one important question I would like to ask from the ministers before giving them the floor for closing remarks. So, a tax-paying question. How much does making of the report cost? So, maybe Minister Rinkēvičs would start with his closing remarks and also respond to that question.
It's not costing millions, sorry, it's costing a couple of thousands of euros. So it's not where we are spending a fortune on this. And I very much want to thank both rapporteurs for doing that, mostly as a kind of work of their own intellectual contribution.
And Minister Liimets.
With closing remarks?
For closing remarks, and maybe you have something to add about the text, about the cost. Yes.
It depends on the rapporteurs as well. We have said that from our perspective, we would like to support the rapporteurs in their endeavor, whether they are organizing some seminars or roundtables to gather ideas. Then we would like to cover the cost of these roundtables, or if there are additional costs related to travels to each other countries. But I agree with very much with Edgars that these numbers are moderate. And of course, the publishing cost is also covered by the governments. I also would like to say a word on, with regard to digital cooperation, as Nordic Baltic region as a whole is well developed in digital era, then of course, but a recent study showed also that there are obstacles in cross-border cooperation. In this sense, of course, it would be good if there are new ideas how these obstacles in cross-border e-services could be eliminated and what we could do to do more, because at least here in Estonia, every person believes that digital e-services are something that are so common, so normal, that it would be good to use them also in other countries. To end with, I would like to say that I think that we are really, we can be confident that the process of this visionary report is in excellent hands. I thank the rapporteurs, Mr. Ragnar Kond and also Janis Eichmanis, for the work they have already started, and I'm eager to see the rest of it. The governments are regularly discussing ongoing activities and setting objectives for new opportunities. However, from time to time, we need new ideas and out-of-the-box thinking. Such visionary reports by independent, eminent co-authors provide us new perspectives and also fresh, perhaps even unconventional ideas. As the saying goes, where there is a will, there is a way, and unconventional ideas may produce excellent results. I'm looking forward to reading the new report next summer, and I'm convinced that it will be a very interesting read and extremely useful additional tool for both governments. I also hope that it will offer new perspectives and innovative ways for cooperation in all these areas that we discussed here today, but also some of them which were not discussed, and the ideas will be useful not only for governments but also for businesses and citizens. Thank you.
And the word back to Riga. Any final words of wisdom by Minister Rinkēvičs to the rapporteurs and everybody else, what to expect?
Eva-Maria made so excellent concluding remarks that I have only one choice as to fully endorse what she has said, and very much looking forward to the presentation of the report, and then of course to the implementation of those ideas that are going to be presented in the report. Thank you.
Okay, and thanks to all the speakers and of course to everybody who watched it. Looking forward to an interesting report.